how does an innocent teen drama end in multiple scandals, abuse allegations, and 3 tragic deaths? When Glee first hit TV screens in 2009, it looked like pure joy, a musical drama about underdogs finding their voice. But behind the bright costumes and catchy covers, something darker was brewing. Cast members battled with grueling schedules, toxic rivalries, and in some cases, secrets so disturbing they destroyed lives. Over time, Glee went from cultural phenomenon to a story haunted by scandal and tragedy. And as loss piled on loss, the question became whether the show itself was cursed. But to understand how a show built on hope and belonging could unravel so dramatically, we have to rewind to 2009, when Glee first appeared on TV screens and almost instantly became a worldwide hit. With its mix of diverse characters and relatable storylines, it struck a chord with audiences everywhere. Millions tuned in, and it soon became one of Fox's biggest hits of the decade. On the surface, Glee looked like magic. The camaraderie felt real, the humor effortless, and the musical numbers brought an energy that felt fresh and exciting. The cast itself was a mix of Broadway-trained performers and relative unknowns. Matthew Morrison, a Tony-nominated stage actor, played Will Schuester, the well-meaning teacher who revives the Glee Club. Michele, fresh off her Broadway breakout in Spring Awakening, took on the role of Rachel Berry, the ambitious, often self-absorbed singer determined to become a star. Monteith was cast as Finn Hudson, the popular quarterback whose decision to join the Glee Club forced him to choose between protecting his popularity and following his passion. Salling played Noah Puckerman, the mohawked bad boy whose tough exterior slowly gave way to surprising vulnerability. And then there was Naya Rivera, who nearly quit acting altogether before landing the role of Santana Lopez, the sharp-tongued cheerleader whose eventual coming-out arc became one of the show's most powerful storylines. Surrounding them was a large ensemble: Chris Colfer as Kurt, the openly gay student targeted by bullies, Amber Riley as powerful vocalist Mercedes, Kevin McHale as Artie, a wheelchair-using guitarist, Diana Agron as Quinn, the head cheerleader hiding a pregnancy, Jenna Ushkovitz as Tina, the shy outsider with a stutter, Heather Morris as Brittany, the dim-witted but lovable cheerleader, and Jane Lynch as Sue Sylvester, the ruthless coach who quickly became one of the show's most iconic characters. Together, they became the faces of a show that blended comedy, drama, and music in a way TV hadn't seen before. By its first season, Glee wasn't just a hit show, but a pop culture force, one that would change the lives of its cast forever. The pilot aired in May 2009, and season 1 averaged nearly 10 million viewers, a massive success for a brand new show. What set Glee apart wasn't just its concept, but its substance. It tackled sexuality, race, disability, and bullying, issues most teen dramas avoided, while also changing how audiences consumed music. Instead of waiting months for a soundtrack, fans could download performances on iTunes the same week they aired. That strategy turned Glee into both a TV hit and a pop chart competitor. By late 2010, the Glee cast had surpassed the Beatles for most Billboard Hot 100 entries by a group, a milestone that showed just how much the show was reshaping music consumption. At the same time, social media was exploding, and Fox made sure Glee was at the center of it. Cast members were pushed to create Twitter accounts and interact directly with fans, making Glee one of the first shows to blur the line between television and online fandom.
Twitter literally became a thing when Glee started. We were required to get Twitter accounts and live tweet during the show.
Fox also uploaded clips from episodes to YouTube, helping Glee build an early, passionate fan base. Crowds of self-proclaimed Gleeks gathered wherever the cast appeared, desperate for a glimpse. At first, that kind of devotion felt like a blessing, but it quickly turned dangerous, as fans demanded autographs, selfies, and constant access. Chris Colfer once recalled being mobbed inside a movie theater to the point that he was physically harmed.
What's the scariest thing that's happened to you?
I was at a movie theater once, and I was by myself, stupidly, and I was semi-mobbed, but it got very physical, and people were pulling at me and grabbing me, and I had to call the police, and the next day I was covered in bruises because people got so physical with me.
Colfer's experience was extreme, but he wasn't alone. Most of the young cast were barely out of their teens, suddenly navigating intense fame with little preparation or protection. They were left to figure it out on their own, and fame wasn't the only strain. The cast were recording songs, learning choreography, and filming episodes on a relentless schedule. Rather than resting between seasons, Glee went straight into back-to-back concert tours, first across the US in 2010, then expanding to Canada and the UK in 2011. With barely any downtime, exhaustion set in. To the outside world, Glee seemed untouchable, still breaking records and dominating pop culture. But behind the curtain, the non-stop pressure and loss of privacy were wearing the cast down. And for Corey Monteith, those pressures coincided with a return to struggles he thought he'd left behind, his battles with drugs and alcohol. By the age of 13, Corey was already drinking heavily, smoking pot, and skipping school. By 16, he dropped out entirely after cycling through more than a dozen schools. Looking back, he admitted, "I burned a lot of bridges. I was out of control." He then said his drug use included doing anything and everything as much as possible. At 19, after his friends and family staged an intervention, he entered rehab for the first time. But when he got out, he quickly slipped back into old habits. The turning point came when he stole a large sum of money from a family member to fund his addiction. They gave him an ultimatum: get sober or face police charges. Corey chose sobriety, and for a time it worked. In a 2011 interview, he opened up about his addiction and explained why he wanted to share his story publicly.
If I can, through my experience, shed light on the way out of a difficult situation that I know many kids are experiencing, just like I did when I was a teenager. I mean, that's huge.
That honesty made many fans believe his addiction was behind him. But by 2013, the pressures from Glee, the long filming hours, constant touring, and overwhelming fame coincided with a relapse. During season 4, the signs became clear enough that producers arranged for him to seek treatment, and Corey voluntarily checked himself into rehab once again. The news shocked fans, but also sparked an outpouring of support. After a month in treatment, Corey tweeted his thanks to the people who stood by him. He seemed to be doing better, spotted on vacation in Mexico with his girlfriend and co-star Michele, attending an award show, and posing for photos with friends. Judging by appearances, it looked like he turned a corner. But just 3 months later, on July 13th, 2013, disaster struck. Corey was found dead in his hotel room in Vancouver. He'd overdosed on a toxic mix of heroin and alcohol. The coroner noted that because he'd recently been through rehab, his tolerance was lower than before, meaning a dose that once felt familiar had suddenly become fatal. His death was ruled accidental. Glee wrote his character out with an off-screen death, and season 5's third episode became a tribute to both Finn Hudson and the actor who played him. Corey's death devastated both fans and the cast. Many saw him as the heart of Glee, and without him, the show never fully recovered. Ratings fell sharply, and by its 6th and final season, viewership had collapsed to record lows. For a moment, it seemed like Glee's story might end there. A groundbreaking but bittersweet series remembered for both its highs and this heartbreak. But 9 months after the finale, the show's legacy was jolted into headlines once again, and this time, the story was darker than anyone could have imagined. In December 2015, Mark Salling was arrested at his Los Angeles home after an ex-girlfriend tipped off police.
SWAT-looking guys were coming down the street. They didn't have much to say, but that's when they made entry. As soon as I met them, I heard the big pow, and they said, LAPD, we're making entry, search warrant.
What investigators uncovered was staggering. More than 25,000 images and 600 videos of child sexual abuse material, some involving victims as young as 3 years old. Salling was released on bond, but his life collapsed almost instantly.
Mr. Salling will be freed on bond. As part of that bond, there's a number of terms and conditions that both limit his ability to travel. He's basically restricted to the Los Angeles, Southern California area. He's also been ordered to do certain things like avoid contact with children, not to view any child pornography, not to consume any drugs, and generally to avoid getting into trouble, essentially. But as of right now, he's scheduled to go to trial later this summer on the 2 counts in the federal indictment.
Mark was cut from projects he'd been attached to, and work completely dried up. Some Glee fans noted this wasn't his first brush with disturbing allegations. Years earlier, an ex-girlfriend had accused him of sexual battery, a lawsuit he denied but eventually settled for $2.7 million. By 2017, the evidence against him was overwhelming. In October of that year, he struck a plea deal, pleading guilty to possession of child pornography. Court documents revealed what his sentence would look like: 4 to 7 years in prison, mandatory registration as a sex offender, enrollment in a treatment program, a ban on any contact with minors, restrictions from schools, parks, and playgrounds, and $50,000 in restitution to each victim who requested it. His attorney insisted he was accepting responsibility for his actions. But before the court could deliver its sentence, the story took another dark turn. Weeks before his 2018 sentencing date, Salling was found dead.
Well, Jeff Sharon, his attorney, has just confirmed that actor Mark Salling has been found dead. Sky 2 was over the scene a short time ago. You can see this is where Salling's body was discovered near a riverbed in Sunland. Happened right around 8:50 this morning. TMZ is reporting that Salling may have taken his own life.
The coroner ruled it a by hanging, and the reaction was complicated. Some fans expressed grief and others outrage. Many felt conflicted, mourning a life lost, but unable to reconcile it with the scale of his crimes. His death was another harrowing moment for fans, but the controversies weren't over, because before long, another cast member would step forward with a painful story of her own. In season 4, new faces joined the cast, including Melissa Benoist as Marley Rose, a shy, sweet girl who became the show's new lead female singer, and Blake Jenner as Ryder Lynn, a football player whose arc echoed Finn Hudson's outsider-turned-Glee Club member storyline. On screen, the two shared a brief romance, and off screen, their relationship soon turned real. They began dating in 2012, got married in 2015, and divorced in 2017. 2 years later, in late 2019, Melissa posted an emotional Instagram video revealing the abuse she endured during the marriage, though she didn't name her abuser. She described controlling behavior that escalated into violence.
There was a lot of jealousy. He was snooping on devices. He was angry when I spoke to another man. I had to change clothes often before we went out because he didn't want people looking at me. On a birthday I spent working, I was criticized because I had to dance with a coworker.
The most shocking revelation was about one violent incident that left her with permanent eye damage.
And then he threw something at my face again, only this time it was significantly worse. It was a blow to my face with his iPhone. The impact tore my iris, nearly ruptured my eyeball, lacerated my skin, and broke my nose. My left eye swelled shut. I had a fat lip. Blood was coursing down my face, and I can remember immediately screaming at the top of my lungs.
The injury permanently dilated the pupil in her left eye, a detail that fans would later notice during her run on Supergirl. Though Melissa never identified her abuser by name, fans naturally connected the story to Blake Jenner. The backlash was immediate, with his social media accounts flooded with accusations. Months later, Blake confirmed Melissa's story in a lengthy Instagram post. He admitted to the iPhone incident, writing, "It's a moment that I'll regret for the rest of my life. I'm responsible for the pain I caused her in that moment and beyond, and it's something I'm still working on forgiving myself for." But in the same post, Blake also suggested the abuse had been mutual, alleging that he too had suffered physical assaults. Many felt his apology was too late, given it came nearly a year after Melissa's video. They also took issue with his attempt to frame parts of the abuse as mutual, which seemed to downplay his accountability. Blake's subsequent Instagram posts were bombarded with hate, forcing him to restrict comments, and his acting career collapsed, with no major roles since. By this point, Glee's legacy was looking less like a feel-good musical drama and more like a collection of horror stories. Corey Monteith's overdose, Mark Salling's crimes and and now Melissa Benoist's account of domestic abuse. And even that wasn't the end, because in 2020, the show's biggest star, Michele, would face allegations that added yet another layer of toxicity to Glee's already troubled reputation. On May 29, 2020, Michele posted a tweet condemning the death of George Floyd. She said, "George Floyd didn't deserve this. This was not an isolated incident, and it must end." The very next day, Samantha Ware, who appeared in Glee's final season as Jane Hayward, retweeted Leah's post and said she'd made her life a living hell, to the point that Samantha questioned having a career in Hollywood at all. LMAO, remember when you made my first television gig a living hell? 'Cause I'll never forget. I believe you told everyone that if you had the opportunity, you would shit in my wig, amongst other traumatic microaggressions that made me question a career in Hollywood. The accusation shocked fans. Rachel Berry had always been self-centered on screen, but now it seemed Leah's behavior behind the scenes may have been just as toxic. And with the Black Lives Matter movement surging at the time, many interpreted Samantha's experience as racially charged, sparking massive backlash. Other cast members quickly rallied behind her. Alex Newell, who played Unique Adams from season 3 to season 6, publicly supported her account, making it clear these weren't isolated complaints. Amber Riley, who played Mercedes Jones, also spoke out, acknowledging Leah's past behavior, but saying she hoped she'd grown since then.
I hope that she has grown. That's my hope and my prayer for her. She reached out to me, I responded to her, and that's where it ends for me. I ain't talked to that girl in 2 years.
Her words may have been diplomatic, but the tone suggested there was still some lingering resentment. Heather Morris, who played Brittany, was more blunt. In a tweet addressing her experience with Leah, she said, "Was she unpleasant to work with? Very much so. For Leah to treat others with the disrespect that she did for as long as she did, I believe she should be called out." Even Davia Snell, an actor who appeared in just one episode of the show, tweeted that Leah wouldn't let him share a table with her and the rest of the cast. On the same day, HelloFresh ended their partnership with her, saying they do not condone racism or discrimination of any kind. The backlash left Leah's reputation in ruins. Within days, she had gone from tweeting in support of George Floyd to being accused of racism, losing sponsorships, and facing a wave of castmates publicly calling her out. In response, Leah posted an apology on Instagram, saying she was sorry for acting in ways that hurt people, but it did little to repair the damage. The truth is, tensions between Leah and her castmates had been simmering long before 2020. In her 2016 memoir, Sorry Not Sorry, Naya Rivera recalled how her friendship with Leah deteriorated as Santana became a bigger presence on the show. She wrote, "As the show progressed though, that friendship started to break down, especially as Santana moved from a background character to one with bigger plot lines and more screen time. I think Leah didn't like sharing the spotlight. Soon, she started to ignore me, and eventually it got to the point where she didn't say a word to me for all of season 6. Leah and I definitely weren't the best of friends, and I doubt we'll ever sit on her couch and eat kale together again." For years, their feud was mostly remembered as an interesting part of Glee lore, but in 2020, it took on a haunting weight, because only weeks after the backlash against Leah, Naya herself made headlines when she was reported missing during a boating trip in California. On July 8, 2020, Naya went out on Lake Piru, about 60 miles north of Los Angeles, for a boat trip with her son, Josie. It wasn't an unfamiliar spot. She and her family had visited the lake many times before.
New video released by authorities appears to show Naya Rivera and her 4-year-old son arriving at the dock Wednesday morning for a boat trip that would soon turn tragic. Rivera and her son are seen boarding a pontoon boat before pulling out onto California's Lake Piru. Hours later, Rivera was reported missing after someone saw her son alone on the boat in a life jacket.
An adult life jacket, believed to be Naya's, was still on board the boat. When investigators spoke to Josie, he explained that they had gone swimming together. Naya had helped him back onto the boat, but she never climbed up after him. Authorities believe they may have been caught in a current and that she had enough strength to save her son, but not herself. The discovery sparked a massive search effort. Helicopters, divers, and sonar, all combing the lake. As hours turned into days with no sign of her, the search changed from rescue to recovery. At the shore, her Glee castmates joined her family to wait and pray, while messages of support poured in from around the world. 5 days later, on July 13th, the anniversary of Corey Monteith's death, Naya's body was recovered.
Today, our search teams have recovered a body in the lake. We are confident the body we found is that of Naya Rivera. Their work on this case revealed there was no indication of foul play and no indication this was a suicide.
The coroner confirmed it was an accidental drowning. She'd been healthy and knew how to swim, but a history of vertigo may have made it harder for her in the water.
The crazy part is that Josie told me, he didn't tell me this for a while after. He's like, we jumped in and I said, are you sure about this? She's like, yeah. She's like, oh my God, are we gonna die? And mommy said, don't be silly. He said, and we jumped in and that's what happened, you know?
It was devastating. Naya was just 33 with so much life ahead of her, and a little boy who now had to grow up without his mother. For fans, it was almost impossible to process. 3 major cast members were gone in just 7 years, and the idea of a Glee curse no longer felt like an exaggeration. Yet the headlines kept coming, with the next involving one of the show's most recognizable faces, Matthew Morrison. In May 2022, Matthew Morrison joined So You Think You Can Dance as a judge for season 17, alongside Jojo Siwa and Stephen Twitch Boss. Fans were excited to see him back on primetime television, but the comeback didn't last long. After just a few weeks of filming, Matthew abruptly announced he was leaving the show, citing a failure to follow production protocols. The explanation was vague, and many wondered what had really happened. Days later, reports surfaced that the real reason was far more serious. Matthew had allegedly developed an inappropriate relationship with a female contestant. According to sources, he sent late-night social media messages that made her uncomfortable, prompting her to go to producers. After an internal review, Fox determined his behavior violated their policies and decided to let him go. Matthew denied the allegations. He posted a video defending himself, reading aloud what he claimed was the only message he sent.
It's really unfortunate that I have to sit here and defend myself and my family against blatantly untrue statements made anonymously, but I have nothing to hide. So in the interest of transparency, I will read to you the one message that I wrote to a dancer on the show. Hey, it's Matthew. If you don't mind, would love to get your number and talk you through some things. The end. I sent this because this dancer and I both share a mutual respect for a choreographer that I've known for over 20 years, and I was trying to help her get a job as a choreographer on the show.
He went on to frame the controversy as a product of cancel culture.
It's devastating that we live in this world where gossip rules and people's lives are being thrown around as clickbait. I think this is much bigger than me and this story. Gossip is toxic and it is destroying our society, and we need to do better.
Despite his firm denial of the accusations, many weren't convinced that Matthew was innocent. The contestant had never asked him for help, and judges contacting contestants was clearly against the rules. Former judge Daniel Carity even went on the record dismissing Matthew's explanation.
I can't think of any reason why you would ever contact a contestant. And then the reason he gave about trying to help a choreographer get a gig, I mean, no offense, but it's just kind of ridiculous.
Matthew's exit marked yet another controversy tied to the Glee cast. By this point, the show was no longer remembered just for its songs and storylines, but for the string of troubling headlines surrounding its alumni. And in 2023, a documentary will try to put all of those tragedies and scandals into context. The Price of Glee. The docuseries revisited the deaths of Corey Monteith, Mark Salling, and Naya Rivera, while digging into the toxic dynamics behind the scenes. Most of its insights didn't come from the stars themselves, but from crew members, family, and others who had been close to production. For Corey, one crew member claimed his relapse wasn't entirely his own choice, recalling that another castmate once told him, "You know, if you want to have a drink, you should have a drink. I'll be here. You can always trust that I'll be here for you." He suggested it was the permission that set him on the path to destruction. On Salling, set decorator Barbara Munch described him bluntly. He wasn't just a regular young man, he had some issues going on. It seemed obvious. And when it came to Naya, her father recalled the moment he got the call about her disappearance. You don't find a drifting child asleep on a boat at the end of a lake without his mother and have any hope. I had no hope. The series also touched on the so-called Glee Curse, pointing to untimely crew deaths like production assistant Nancy Moat's suicide and assistant director Jim Fuller's fatal heart attack as proof that the dark cloud hanging over the show went beyond the main cast. But despite its attempts at offering new insight, the docuseries was widely slammed as exploitative. Even cast members pushed back. Kevin McHale, who played Artie, dismissed it as trash, stressing that none of the core actors had been involved. On the one hand, Glee was groundbreaking, a show that inspired millions, broke TV norms, and gave fans a sense of belonging. But on the other hand, its legacy is now tangled up in scandal and tragedy. Was it coincidence, bad luck, or just Hollywood at its darkest? Maybe it's all three. What's clear is that Glee will never just be remembered as a joyful teen drama. It's also a story of loss, proof that even the brightest shows can cast the darkest shadows.